The shooting has spiked tensions in Jerusalem, which has seen near daily clashes between Palestinian protesters and Israeli police, particularly around the contested sites that are holy to both Jews and Muslims. In Washington, the Obama administration is on the defensive over anonymous criticism of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. An unidentified administration official is quoted in a published report using a derogatory phrase to describe Netanyahu's settlement policies as cowardly.
And we condemn anybody who uses language such as was used in this article that does not reflect the president, it does not reflect me. It is disgraceful, unacceptable, damaging.
Meanwhile, Palestinians are welcoming a decision by Sweden to recognize a Palestinian state, a move it insists is not about taking sides.
We know that the conflict between Israel and Palestine can only be solved through a negotiated two-state solution. Sweden's decision today aims at promoting such a solution.
The decision was not so well received by the Israeli government.
It polishes that illusion that the Palestinians have, that they can get whatever they want without coming to the negotiating table.
In a new report, the UN Human Rights Committee is urging Israel to stop construction of Jewish settlements in occupied territories and withdraw all settlers.
The settlements policy is in violation of the obligations of Israel as a state party to the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights.
James Aiken, TVB News.
Moscow and Kiev have reached a deal that will guarantee Russian gas exports flow into Ukraine as well as the European Union through next March. The multi-billion-dollar agreement comes after months of hard bargaining by Moscow for Western commitments to help Ukraine pay off debts to Russia. Pressure for a deal had been mounting as temperatures started to drop. Russia provides about 1/3 of the EU's natural gas, roughly half of which is pumped via Ukraine. Ukraine, in turn, relies on Russia for about half of its own natural gas. The EU energy chief says the deal could be the first glimmer of a relaxation in the tense relations between the two countries. Crash investigators are combing through wreckage after a small plane plunged into a flight training building in the U.S. state of Kansas. 4 people, including the pilot, died in the disaster. The pilot was the only person on board the plane. The crash sparked a fire that sent up plumes of smoke that could be seen 4 kilometers. 3 other victims were inside the building when the twin-engine Beechcraft went down. 5 other people were injured. Officials say the pilot reported losing an engine just after takeoff and was trying to return to the airport in Wichita. All right, Chris, over to you for sports.
And some basketball. It's early in the season, and after 4 seasons with the Miami Heat, LeBron James was welcomed back to Cleveland. But as Jameson Wong shows us, the NBA's feel-good story didn't go quite as it was scripted against the New York Knicks.
One more time, Cleveland, Ohio. Make some noise for the where they go.
The wait was over for Cleveland fans, but it took James nearly half of the first period to get his first basket for the Cavs this season. And the King would struggle on his homecoming to Cleveland. He was 5 of 15 from the floor for 17 points. The 2-time NBA champ also committed 8 turnovers. The Knicks' Carmelo Anthony scored a game-high 25. Meanwhile, the other members of Cleveland's Big Three had solid games and kept them in it. Kyrie Irving with 22 points and 7 assists, while Kevin Love tallied 19 points to go along with 14 rebounds. Clutch bucket by Melo clinched it late for New York, the final 95-90.
Well, my shooting is, a lot of me, just out of rhythm. I think my turnovers, some of them was careless, some of them was chemistry, kind of I'm throwing passes where I was hoping that some of my teammates were, and they were not there, and that will come with each game, will come with each practice, us continue to learn each other.
Since he's won, it's a little bit
Christmas Day, James returns to South Beach to play his former team, the Miami Heat. Jamison Wong, TVB News.
Tennis now at Britain's Andy Murray has qualified for the season-ending tour finals. Murray needed to reach the last 8 at the Paris Masters, and he did that with a win over Bulgarian Grigor Dimitrov. Set scores in the match were 6-3 and then again 6-3. The 27-year-old Scot has come on strong with 3 titles in 5 weeks. Murray will next play world number 1 Novak Djokovic. The Serb posted a 6-3, 7-6 victory over Frenchman Gaël Monfils. To ice hockey, and the Pittsburgh Penguins shut out the LA Kings 3-0. Chris Kunitz had 2 goals, and he also had an assist for the Penguins. Chris Letang scored the other goal for Pittsburgh. And Marc-Andre Fleury saved 36 shots for his 30th career NHL shutout. Evgeny Malkin became the 5th Pens player to register 400 assists. Others on that list include Sidney Crosby, Jaromir Jagr, and Mario Lemieux.
And finally tonight, let's take a look at the situation out there as the Occupy movement is now in its 34th day. The protesters are still out in force, camped out along the roads in Admiralty, Causeway Bay and Mongkok. This despite court injunctions ordering protesters to vacate the areas in Mongkok and outside Civic Tower in Admiralty. So far, there are no signs the demonstrators have any plans to adhere to the interim injunctions. Now, earlier on, some suggested legislative councillors to trigger a de facto referendum on political reform by resigning. Now, today, legislator Wong Yuk-man said he is willing to resign, but Wong is worried that some pan-democratic legislators would ask protesters to retreat from occupied zones as a precondition for the referendum. On the other side of the political divide, pro-establishment lawmakers criticize a de facto referendum as a waste of public resources. Regina Ip of the New People's Party said the central government has already made its decision on political reform. And she said that not even a de facto referendum would change anything. Now, meanwhile, the Civil Human Rights Front criticized the police for treating the case of officers allegedly using excessive force against Civic Party member Ken Zhang as an internal rather than a criminal investigation. They've set up their own group for people to make complaints against the police now at the protest sites. The police have called these criticisms invalid, however, and said that it is reasonable for them to deal with complaints against the force with existing mechanisms. And meanwhile, the student leaders are working on another strategy, and this one means taking matters into their own hands by flying to Beijing during the APEC summit. Alex Chow of the Federation of Students said Occupy representatives may consider approaching central government officials about their dissatisfaction with Beijing's framework for the 2017 CE election. Now, he said this unless the local government responds to their open letter. There are several groups that are discussing the feasibility of the plan. Obviously, there are many criticisms, although some say that this may be the last resort that they can think of. As for more fallout over the Occupy protests, police have arrested 2 people who allegedly threw objects out the window at Occupy protesters in Mongkok. This is 1 man and 1 woman who were accused of dropping glass bottles over the Mongkok protest zone on 2 occasions earlier this month. A woman suffered injuries to her neck as a result. And the duo are also linked to a similar incident in Mongkok earlier this year. The male suspect has now been freed on bail, while the female suspect is still being detained. And that was the news for tonight.
Good night.
like a Franken goat. It's